I've got to make this video because I've just come across this article. And I just thought, what? And I stayed up until 2 a.m. trying to recreate my own Instagram photos with AI. In fact, I stayed up with 2 mates in the WhatsApp group as we all got into it and shared our creations. So let me share with you what I discovered. These days, artificial intelligence, or AI, is equal parts mind-bogglingly brilliant and mind-bogglingly scary.
I try to convince people to slow down AI, to regulate AI. I tried for years. Nobody listens.
No one.
Usually there'll be some new technology. It will cause damage or death. There will be an outcry. There will be an investigation. Years will pass. It could be terrible, and it could be great. It's not clear.
The technology is without doubt capable of some incredible things. When it comes to AI creating art or photography, there's a lot of YouTube thumbnails that show incredible portraits that you just cannot tell are not real people, created by AI software such as MidJourney. There's many amazing examples on the MidJourney gallery too, the most standout ones being super detailed and photorealistic portraits of Viking kings, warrior chiefs, and even a lizard. So after many hours of diving into and experimenting with AI image creation, how close are we to being redundant as photographers? Well, my initial attempts with MidJourney left me just disappointed. I only asked for a camera on a desk, but it seems the AI just couldn't recreate a camera that we would recognise. Instead, coming up with its own interpretation of what a camera could look like based on its varied references. So then I just went for something wacky and asked for God crying. Not bad. Then I thought, let's try and create something that would fit on my Instagram feed. So it was time to get into landscapes. My first request was for Greek mountains at sunset. That's literally what I put into the software. And suddenly, wow, we're into dodgy territory where it's starting to blur the lines of what is real and what isn't. When I shared the images to my Instagram stories, one of the bits of feedback I had was that people felt it was important that images like this are clearly marked as AI rather than real. Then I cooked up some forest shots with sun rays to try and recreate some shots I took in Holland, and some highway light trails to compare to similar long exposure shots I took here. Then I started to specifically ask for photographs of Cornwall at sunset. I've taken a lot of shots of the Cornish coast and I wasn't sure if it would even know what Cornwall looked like. The results were pretty impressive. MidJourney gives you 4 versions of your request and you can choose to upscale them or get new varieties for each image. I should say at this point that you have to use the Discord chat server software to get involved in this, which is not always intuitive, but I've used it for working on NFT projects among other things, so was already familiar and part of that community. There is a free trial available that gets you about 20 images, after which you have to subscribe, which is $10 a month for 200 images or $30 for an unlimited number. But anyway, here is an upscaled version of a Cornwall sunset image. That is impressive. I think I'd be fooled into thinking that was a part of Cornwall I'd just not come across. Then I tried to recreate this shot of a lighthouse on a Dutch island. The results were pretty incredible. Encouraged, I tried for a similar image to this boat shot from the Mediterranean, and I got these, which got me more optimistic. But sometimes the upscaled results aren't as good as you hope. Next up was trying to recreate a very specific Cornish landscape shot that I love to shoot. It's from Portreath, and the results of this one weren't great if we're looking to have the location recognisable, but they were impressive for looking like other generic seascape photos I've shot. Then I thought I'd try to use an image as a reference to see if it could come up with something similar to this Holywell Bay shot. Here's the results. Impressive for the vague concept being familiar, but it wasn't quite what I hoped for. So I tried the same request without the reference image and got these. None of it setting my world on fire. So I moved away from specific Cornish sunsets and just made a simple request for Amsterdam. These, though quite oil painting-y, were rather nice. I played around with some portraits for a bit, but I'll come to those separately in a minute, and then went back to beaches, oceans and sunsets, and I got some of my favourite results yet. The details in these are incredible. The mood and colour palette is beautiful, though some of the things in them are a bit unusual. Then I just asked MidJourney for the most stunning landscape photo ever. That's what I put in. Here's what it looks like. And how it looks upscaled. Stunning. Impressive, but the upscales are almost always over sharp. I bet you've wondered what the greatest sunset ever photograph looks like. Well, wonder no more. Here it is. It definitely looks more like a piece of art than a photograph, but it's lovely to look at, no doubt. I'll come back to a couple of other landscape shots later, but for now, let's move on to portraits. Here's my first attempt of just an old man in black and white. Equally as impressive as it is creepy. I'm not sure what references it has for scuba divers, but these aren't quite right. Here's a man making friends with a fish, which was an idea based on my documentary Mike and Maurice, but the results are a bit meh. Here's what a Polaroid photograph of a photographer giving a thumbs up looks like. This is a Dutch girl, close up, shot on Portra 400. And this was a girl in her 20s with light streaks across her face. I really like this. The way she looks at the camera is good, the bokeh is good, but the sharpness is too much again. And while I love the bokeh lights, they're not really what I wanted. Here I used this reference photo of me to generate these images. Not sure what I'd do with those. Here's another girl, this time surrounded by plants. These are some varieties of a man walking a long desert road and a lonely old man sat on the street. Again, I've got more portraits to show you, but we'll come back to them. I just quickly want to go over some of the weirder things I played around with. I dabbled with some wacky and fun stuff like requesting cheese plants underwater, film camera tattoos and country bands in bars before asking what the end of the world would look like. This is how it will be. Doesn't look fun. This is the best art ever made, which I love. This is heaven. This is my car on some mountains, cats with lightsabers, the year 3000, a cowboy, sort of, riding into the sunset. Judge Dredd-ish, some more cameras that don't look like cameras, neon Indiana Jones, some cool looking samurais, sea monsters and sandwiches. This stuff was just good fun to play around with in between the serious stuff. Now, here came a bit of a revelation right before I started to shoot this video. It's a little phrase called testp. By adding 2 dashes and the letters TESTP to your requests, it tells the AI to make it more realistic than stylistic. There's a lot of modifiers you can add on and experiment with, and it seems not all of them are in the guide, as you'll see some people using things you've not read about. But testp gave me some incredible images that were probably the best yet. Here I asked MidJourney for an old shack in the middle of a cornfield at golden hour. And this is just amazing, the detail, the depth. Here's another landscape example which looks beautiful using testp. Now here's some portraits using it. Old men with lots of wrinkles and detail and just wow. I asked for these shots of women to look like they were taken in the 1970s at a festival like Woodstock. There's so much going on in these images, so much background content that is beautifully out of focus. testp was a bit of a game changer, but for everything that MidJourney does so well and blows my mind, there's usually something that is weird and throws it off. Eyes is a common one, and in these shots, I found that getting it to show a peace sign was a bit of a struggle. And there's certainly no use here for creating commercial client content if you need, for example, specific wine bottles for brands or exact bits of clothing. And it's certainly not going to rob wedding or event photographers from capturing those big moments. I think the reality is that right now, it's not going to threaten many, if any, photographers. It's not good enough for most commercial applications. It's very cool for creating art and reminds me a bit of the buzz around NFTs. There's lots of potential there and it will probably become a key part of our future, but it's not quite been perfectly worked out just yet. It's mind-blowingly good technology, great technology. There's a whole lot of addictive fun to play around with, but I'm not sure whose job it's replacing. It might not be there yet, but how long yet may be could be rather short. But will it ever really replace photography like the article suggests? Could we end up selling our cameras en masse? I don't think so. And here's why. The AI is not capturing a real place, a real mood, real people at a real time. It's not documenting a moment, but rather creating one of its own. And that reality, that freezing of a moment in time is the whole reason we love looking at photographs and sharing them. That's why I think there will always be a place for photography. It can never be usurped by AI because AI will never be authentically documenting anything. It might be able to fool people, but people don't want to be fooled. They don't like the deception. But it will have a place. It's interesting, it's beautiful. It's why people can love both big Hollywood movies and gritty documentaries. They're different. We know one is fake and one is real. But going back to the article that started all of this, it seems pretty clear, having read through it, that the headline was a bit clickbaity. I'm sure the author doesn't believe it's dead, and I'd be surprised if they were involved in that part of the headline that seemed so controversial. I don't think photographers need to worry about AI, but it'll be worth keeping an eye on. And I'd absolutely encourage you to play around with stuff like MidJourney. It's very fun and very addictive to be able to create images like these so quickly and easily. See you in the comments. Like, subscribe, love you, share, bye.